Our family room was filled with dozens of Billy the Singing Bass. He's a fake novelty fish mounted on a trophy plaque that does a little song and dance when you push a button. They were on sale at CVS Pharmacy, and my mother had stockpiled them because they would make great gifts. In the closet next to them were clapping monkeys with cymbals and singing mechanical parrots that would also make great gifts. Upstairs were purses with giant clocks on the front because, again, they would also make great gifts. And all these things accumulated in our house, and most of them never left. In our basement were boxes upon boxes filled with every school paper we'd ever written and every teacher's lesson plan she'd ever composed. Every surface of the house also bulged with thousands of videotapes. A very special episode of Family Ties or Silver Spoon or any show tangentially related to Israel or Judaism that aired in the 80s or 90s. These video treasures occasionally contributed an AV component to her religious school curriculum, but again, most of them just piled up. It was the same with the sequin dresses from the 80s, bedazzled jean jackets, track suits covered in puffy paint, toys we had outgrown, spices congealed into blocks. Everything my mother owned fit into one of four categories. I've been looking for that. This is very valuable. It's a gift for someone else, and it's important to me. Don't you dare throw anything out. When my parents retired to Dallas a decade ago from Maryland, I flew in to help her declutter. We were sifting through the hurricane of loose papers, and she looked at each one agonizing. Delighted, she suddenly handed me my kindergarten diploma, which I promptly placed in a trash bag. Don't you want to save this? Would an employer ask me for this one day? Sure, you have a college degree, but did you graduate kindergarten? I told her that if she looked at every piece of paper, it would be a cherished and valuable memory. If she threw it out without looking at it, she'd never miss it. When they moved, literally everything she had went into boxes, which piled into their new garage. Years later, I found musty pillows, a broken ghetto blaster like John Cusack used in Say Anything, old magazines, and junk mail. When she caught me tossing something out, she would lose her mind. What are you doing with those toy cars? They were my nephew's, and he hasn't touched them in a decade, and he's a teenager, and they're literally in an old crock box. Please save them. He's 16 and he has a real car. He doesn't need them. The house in Dallas kept getting worse. All the valuable clutter from the old house combined with the new valuable clutter, and I still tried to reason with her because I accepted this as her choice. And I never accepted that maybe it was also a compulsion. The day I realized we were never going to have a rational conversation, I was stumbling around the room she used for guests, hitting myself on all the crap she had in there. In the corner was a dusty 5-disc CD changer with dual cassette decks at the base. It came with 2 enormous speakers attached by thin wires. She saw me taking it outside to the trash, and she cornered me. Leo, I use this all the time and you can't replace it. They don't even sell them anymore. You're lucky to find one on eBay and it's hundreds of dollars. I showed her that you can easily buy them at Walmart for under $100 and she hasn't used this in a decade. Then I went through the house and made a tower of the 9 other CD player cassette deck combos and stacked them next to the 130 rolls of paper towels in the garage. I asked her what sort of horrific misfortune would have to befall her to not only have 9 CD players break, but be engaged in a life or death situation where she had to put multiple CDs on different cassette tapes. Crying dramatically and pleading, she watched me put it back and checked the next day that it was still there. On my next visit, it went out on the street corner a block away, and she never knew it was gone. I joined my father and my brothers in discreetly throwing things out when we could. I did get caught once with a stack of 35 millimeter cameras missing their backs and a 1 megapixel digital phone that were broken, and I was forced to put them back in the drawer. She was never going to get rid of things. There's not going to be a purge. It's just too emotional for her. I think it's more than her just being a former refugee with Holocaust parents, because it's not just the valuable hand-me-downs. It's the plastic junk, the broken things, the outdated technology. And I know eventually we will throw everything out. The stuff that matters to her is the stuff that weighs the whole family down. It's the stuff that forces my father's clothes into cardboard boxes and out of the closet filled with her outfits. I gradually stopped trying and my visits became less frequent and shorter. The arguments still endured over rotted vegetables in the fridge that would go into a soup, expired dairy products, and the individual packets of butter and Parmesan cheese. 3 years ago, I lost my older brother. It was tragic addiction spiral, and it pained me to see my parents so broken. I realized that I couldn't keep my distance anymore, and they needed me. So I decided I would go down once a month to help, and I just didn't know what to do with all my time down there. I'm not the sort of person who's good at just sitting around. I have ADHD. I want to fix things, and things still seemed out of control with all her clutter. But in the back of my mind, I also knew that hidden away in boxes were the things I really cared about, the memories she had recorded. In addition to everything else, my mother was always the sort of person who was never without a recording device. In fact, she even claimed she filmed my birth in a mirror because my father couldn't hold the camcorder straight. And somehow the act of capturing it was more important than whether her maybe someday gay son would ever want to gaze into her. I thought of inheriting these stacks of media and not knowing who the people were and not having anyone to ask. My parents are both overweight with long lists of health problems. They are fading. One day, I will not be able to ask my mother who she was posing with. What was the celebration? Why was she laughing? I realized there was a way I could get control and give my parents an escape from the grief. I needed to become the family historian, and we were just running out of time. I started with the boxes of slides. I bought a machine that connected to my laptop, and I made my way through the memories that used to appear projected on a screen in a basement. No one had looked at them since 1983. By the time I was done, I'd scanned 9,000 slides. I discovered a past that predated me. My mother thought she had no pictures of herself as a teenager, but my grandfather had hundreds in a box. There were moments of time we could walk through together. She could laugh and share them on Facebook. She marveled at how young everyone was. And of course, I wasn't allowed to throw out any of the slides because, hey, maybe we'd have a slideshow party one day. In the mountains of videotapes, there were thousands of hours of home movies too. We'd been in a standstill for years over digitizing these. She was petrified and opposed to mailing anything out because they could get lost. Meanwhile, the tapes were disintegrating. So I secretly shipped out a box of videos to a company, and I emailed my mother a link where she could watch her wedding, laugh at the Passover Seder where my uncle dressed up like Santa Claus, and delight in herself as a young mother. She forwarded them to distant relatives and counted the likes on social media. Over the next couple of years, I went through the tapes trying to figure out what was important, me telling her no one wanted my younger brother's grainy soccer game or the third grade play where I had a line. And I know that soon we'll have to sell the house to pay for my father's medical bills. To be honest, it would take a lifetime to sift through all the things she's collected. Marie Kondo thing, I've documented walking through all the valuables in the house and recorded the stories behind them. And we'll probably have to hire an estate company to go through the house. What really matters is knowing that all these people are still alive and I can hear their voices and I can study their faces. I can be a kid again. My parents are forever beautiful and skinny. I know my grandparents retelling their Holocaust stories will never be lost. All the bar mitzvah parties where we were just young and happy and will never dim. And as my parents fade, as their memories go, as their health gets worse and worse, we can always escape back to a better past.
Leo Dekelbaum, give him a hand.